Welcome back to the Motivating Force podcast. I'm host Sway. This is Justin joining me as always. And on this wonderful Wednesday, we're going to be having a shower thoughts discussion, something that I've been thinking about lately. And it's just one of those, like I said, shower thoughts that, you're just sitting there taking a shower, then your mind goes off. And the topic of this discussion is going to be about why humanity needs religion and spirituality. We're not going to go like telling you that certain religions are right, certain spiritualities or whatever is the correct way to go or not the correct way to go. It's just a straight up discussion. I pulled up some articles that I wanted to talk about as well. But because when you really think about it, right? Like what does religion and spirituality, what do all these different things have in common? Because we're raised Christian, so it's like we kind of have that bias of having the knowledge of what that entails, but all these other cultures and religions we don't really know much of. But when you look into it, it's like what I at least can pull out from it is like structure. They all have this set like rules and guidelines that they lay out for like the ideal lifestyle for you. Is that kind of like the same thing you get?
Yeah, it's just basic guidelines of how to be a decent human being while we're here sharing this space with a bunch of other human beings.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to talk like out of line about somebody else's religion or culture, but it's just something that I've been thinking about because when you really analyze like needing a structured lifestyle, one of the things you look at is like, or that I look at least, is people that go into AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous or any of those kind of rehabilitation courses. And one of the things that they push on you is religion. Like that's kind of one of the 12-step programs, is to give up yourself to like a higher power.
Yeah. I know they do that in jail and prison a lot as well too.
Yeah, and I think it's because like when you have this idea of something bigger than you, it's a lot easier to give up your like faults and your mistakes to that, even if it's imaginary or if you don't believe in it 100%, like it's easier to do that and to give like your faults and mistakes out to the void, for like a lack of better words, than to do it to like the person sitting in front of you, because that's like an actual person. You feel a little bit more judged when you're telling a human being, because they're also faulty. They're also making mistakes all the time. They're not perfect. But when you have this religion on you, or like this deity that's this perfect thing, it's a lot easier to feel that like you're not being judged when you're giving out your mistakes.
I mean, in general, across the board, even with the religious side of it and the non-religious side of it, when you talk about like spirituality and more like the naturalistic things and being of the world, it's always that you're putting something above you.
Yeah.
And not in a negative way, but it does help shed certain responsibilities, certain weights off of your shoulder, because it can kind of put you in more of like that childlike state where you will have these faults and these mistakes you're going to make, and that's okay. The same way it's okay for a child to do that, because you're underneath this bigger power.
Yeah. Because something that's interested me when looking into like history and looking at the past civilizations as we had before, and it's like everything had some form of structure in religion. Some kind of religion was established for that civilization, for it to grow exponentially and, conquer different lands, or, just kind of evolve as humanity. And it really interested me because it wasn't necessarily that same religion that has grown throughout the years. Like it wasn't always Christianity and then it's just progressed until now. It's always been different adaptations of religions. And it's like, why have we caused so much war and death and destruction over something that the whole world hasn't been unified on? And it's just, it kind of like boggles my mind a little bit when you think about it.
It is kind of weird because in a lot of different cultures or a lot of different religions, it's to bring the world together under unified peace. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the end of the book.
Yeah.
It's always related to the end times for things like that happening. And it's just really interesting to see how across the board there's nothing where you're going to unify the whole world together.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like that impossibility.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. So, well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's like a unified peace, because religions don't have to be peaceful. It's just like that structure that I was talking about.
Yeah.
But it's like joined together in this common belief, right? The belief of the masses. But it's like I pulled out an article or a quote from an article that I was reading on the American Psychological Association website, apa.org. And it says, religion has survived and thrived for more than 100,000 years. It exists in every culture, with more than 85% of the world's population embracing some sort of religious belief. Researchers who study the psychology and neuroscience of religion are helping to explain why such beliefs are enduring. They're finding that religion may, in fact, be a byproduct of the way our brains work, growing from cognitive tendencies to seek order from chaos, to anthropomorphize our environment, and to believe the world around us was created for our use. Religion has survived, they surmise, because it helps us form increasingly larger social groups held together by common beliefs. And that's what I was just talking about. Like, if that's the push for all of this, and if the end goal is supposedly world peace, why is that the main reason that we've caused so much war and, destruction? And like looking at, I mean, we've touched on it before when we talk about like the Catholic Church, right? Like the Templars and the Great Crusades, right? And how they're even taking over these holidays that we've had episodes about. And it's like, we didn't really think about it until we had those deep dives in the holidays themselves. Like, these were groups of civilizations that were having their own holidays or celebrating their own festivities their own way. And then here comes this Catholic Church with their religion, and they wanted to grab in as many people as possible. So what do? They destroy everything, or they, cause some kind of war to get everybody under the same kind of umbrella, but going against the whole point of peace.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that, and a lot in the holidays too, where we saw the persuasion to change certain, policies and celebrations and whatnot to kind of conform with whoever was the religious power at the time. But the bigger issue that I think when we talk about like the violence and everything and the Crusades and all this stuff, it's really ironic, because it's people getting away from the principles of religious belief and spirituality and being one with your brothers and sisters, or one with nature, things like that. Because people seem to forget that across the board, no matter what religious philosophy you follow, you are at fault, right? And then they, over the course of time, believe like, okay, but we're all Christians, or we're all Catholics, or whatever it is, whatever the cool kid is at the time, right? We're all that thing, and these people aren't. Those people are worse than me. So and it destroys the whole concept, the whole issue in the first place. But that's the tie of the two conflicting sides of human nature coming at each other. Because you have like the human nature side, and you have the human evolution side. Yeah. And you get that conflicting result, because there's always going to be that fight for the fittest. Yeah.
And what you're saying about like pushing out the blame, basically. So instead of saying that you're at fault and you're pushing somebody else at fault, you're taking that and evolving it to a sense of herd mentality, where now the group that is under that same religious belief or whatever is the singular person, and pushing the blame onto somebody else that's different.
Yeah, pretty much, because it's, you're taking it as like we're holier than these people, we're better than these people, these guys are pagans. So what do we need to do? We need to go kill all of them, I guess has been the common theme across history. And I think that's what causes a lot of the violence and a lot of the Crusades and whatnot. And it's not getting down to the simple nature that you would be the pagan in somebody else's eyes as well. Yeah. So it's spreading the tolerance and the acceptance and the peace, That's just me personally, because I know we talk about it a lot in the Christian faith to love your brothers and sisters, of the faith, and then also people not of the faith, because they aren't your responsibility. So you can't, you're not the one that's going to punish them. Yeah. So what's the point? That's up to the higher power to do that. So who are you to come along and cause all these violent eruptions over the course of time?
Yeah. And that's something that I've been like talking to somebody at my job about recently when we're talking about religion. I know that's like one of the rules, not to talk about politics or religion when you're at work or whatever. But when we're talking about it, I'm like, when you really think about it, right? There's so many different adaptations of the same religion, right? There's so many different like Christian translations, if you want to say. Like there's so many different books, or the Bible is translated so many different ways that even when you were to take like a King James version of the Bible and you take a quote from there or a verse, and then you take a verse from a newly translated one, it almost seems like they contradict each other just because of the wording. So it's like you can even have arguments within the same belief system just because of how things have been translated over time. And then that causes arguments and disruptions, like you're saying, in this relationship that you can have, instead of just, just agreeing that it's just the structure and the principles that you need to follow, not these like, I don't want to call them commandments because the commandments are the rules, but
guidelines.
No, like instead of believing or following the hierarchy or the political system within the religion itself. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Catholicism having its like the Pope and the Archbishop and all those different things, like just taking the fundamentals of what it's like, the message it's trying to get out to you in the first place. Like that's why I narrowed it all down to like its structure. So when we're always talking about having that structured lifestyle, I'm not necessarily telling you, you need to have religion in your life. If that's a personal choice that you want to have or you don't want to have, I'm also not pushing against it or for it. Like everybody has the freedom to choose what they want, but I'm thinking when you want to actually have that structured lifestyle, you want to start putting yourself in the right direction, you are going to have to kind of give yourself up to like that higher power, whatever you want to call that. But so then it can be that sense of accountability on you. So then you don't have to feel like you have all that weight on you at all times.
I think a lot of people ignore the fact that they're going to die one day, which is a lot of problems we have with people not making risks and not making jumps in life, is because they're too afraid, and they're too afraid of what's going to happen when they die. And like on the worldly perspective, like what people are going to say about them, things like that. But you need to be comfortable with your death to really have a good grasp of what you should be doing while you're here. And I don't care if that grasp of your death, that conceptualization, is that you're going to be put 6 feet in the earth and that's it, or you're going to die and go to heaven and live in this golden city, or you're going to be reincarnated to your favorite house pet.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me really what people choose to believe like that,
well,
but you can't ignore your death, because that's the one of the very few things you're guaranteed in this life, and you're going to have a really frazzled, chaotic life if you try to avoid your death.
I like that word, frazzled.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But yeah, that's something, especially in this society, that science has evolved so much that it's like there's actual research being done on trying to extend the duration of your life, even if it's not to become immortal or to live forever. It's to like repair cells. And like I've listened to people talk about this. It's like they're actually breaking it down where the science is there, but they just haven't perfected it.
Right.
It's just like repairing cells that have gotten tired or bringing life to. It's like he used the metaphor of charging a battery. Because everything in your brain is electric pulses and stuff. So then when that charge goes out, you tend to lose like cognitive abilities like Alzheimer's and all that, or Parkinson's. So then it's bringing sparks to that, recharging those cells or those sparks, so then it can work efficiently again. And then that's, they're curing things that were incurable in the past.
But in the same way, isn't that like the older your phone gets, the less the charge lasts, right?
Yeah. Like
you can recharge it to 100% every night, but if that phone's 3 years old, now it's only going to last you 4 hours of the day instead of 12. know?
And then also when you look at stories, movies, TV shows, when they're talking about any person or being or deity that's immortal, do they seem to be living like the best life possible? Like I believe, a couple episodes ago, you were telling me about Neil deGrasse Tyson that was saying in an interview that he wouldn't want to live forever because then he's not going to achieve great things. There's no drive to get things done before he dies because then he's always going to live. What's the point of doing anything? You know, he can always push it off. That procrastination can sit in. So it's like, why do you want to be immortal in the first place? So yeah, you need to be comfortable with where you're going to end up or what's going to happen to you or what you even believe is going to happen to you when you die.
Yeah. Because see, that's the exact flip of the coin from the last episode. We were talking about that and about getting that fire underneath your ass and getting you to do something before you die. And then now it's kind of like that other way where we're telling you about you can't ignore it. And the more comfortable you are and realize about your death, the better it's going to be for you while you're here. And it's like the thing with like Stoicism preaching on that so heavily, you know? And of course it might have a little too much of a focal point on your death, but it's still there. And sometimes people need that extra push, which is why it's whatever you're comfortable with. That's what you should be kind of following along in your life, whatever type of spirituality or religion that's going to make you come to terms with the fact that you're not going to be here in 100 years.
Yeah.
It's that simple, you know?
And it's to change the stigma that's currently on like death is being that bad thing. You know, when you have that sense of spirituality or religion or giving up that whatever it is to your higher power, like it changes your perspective on death. Like you don't think that it's this bad thing that's going to happen. You just, okay, it's gonna happen. Why does it have to be bad? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be good.
Yeah.
But you know, it's gonna be what it's gonna be.
Yeah. I feel like it's more of a cultural thing. And not just like not saying cultural thing in the States, but in a almost like a human nature cultural type of sense. It's really an issue we see with first world countries, because in first world countries, you're not having people producing 6, 7, 8 children at a time, you know, and the further along that as a, you know, group of, you know, civilization progresses, the less kids they actually produce because they're just trying to get so much more work done.
Correct.
That they end up having only 1 or 2 kids. So if you have 7 kids and one of them dies when they're like 12, you're kind of like, I got 5 more, you know, and it's like, it's not that big of a deal, but we hold life so precious in first world countries now. And it's such a major issue because if one of your kid dies early, and God forbid it happens, but it does. And if that happens to you and you only had that child, you only had 2 kids, what is left of your legacy?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I kind of see is like our fear of death and our fear of really having these types of issues in our lives or confronting these issues in our lives is a byproduct of living in a safer environment.
Okay.
Which, take it as you will, good or bad, right? But for your human nature, I think that does more harm towards your more, I guess, like instinctual side than it does good.
Yeah, and when you're saying that like people are holding on to life like so dearly, it's almost like when people have all this money, you know, they're it's kind of like currency with life, right? They're holding on to it so tight and they're not doing anything with it instead of just spending their money and, you know, living life, enjoying everything that they've earned, right? But when you're holding on to your life and not doing anything with it because you're scared of losing it, you're scared of that death aspect, you're not going to get anything done. And it's like we need to change that mentality, like you said, culturally, so then we can actually do something with that precious life that we do have. And I like that the conversation has kind of evolved to like a next step. But there was another point I wanted to talk about too, because I pulled this quote from that same website where they were talking about that people are quick to believe that someone or something is behind even the most benign experiences. They may perceive the sound of the wind rustling leaves as a potential predator. You know, like when you see in the movies that there's like the bushes are rustling.
As I said,
like,
that instinctual nature.
Exactly. Yeah. And in evolutionary terms, it was probably better for us to mistakenly assume that the wind was a lion than to ignore the rustling and risk death. So it's like exactly the point you were just making.
Head on the nail, man.
Yeah. And it's like you can see where that can make sense, like we were talking about in the past, and those primitive civilizations where it was like they needed to unify that group or that civilization in order to grow, right? So, I mean, that was breaking more of the cognitive reasoning and why our brains function the way it does, and why we need to have that push of like there's always something behind what we do, even if it's the wind rustling some leaves, there's something behind that. Or if it's, hey, this fell into my lap, this opportunity arose, something did that. If it's karma, if it's God, if it's whatever, if it's the law of attraction, you know what I mean? But it's the way our brain is always like, there has to be a reason for something. And that was one of the answers I kind of got when looking for why does humanity need religion in the first place?
Right. So there's my here's my big motivational analogy towards all that. Okay. As we're saying, right, you're so afraid of death, and we lose a lot of this spirituality, a lot of this religion, a lot of the comfort of the fact that you're going to die one day. And it goes against our human nature, as does most things in a first world country, in a evolving society, right? We try getting away from that. And when you hear the rustling of the leaves, when you're seeking an opportunity and the leaves start rustling and you're looking for the lion, how long are you going to hide until you go back out after that opportunity? And the more afraid you are of that risk, the more afraid you are of the lion, the longer you're going to just sit there and be scared instead of going out there, getting after it, and making an impact with your time here. That's what I got.
This guy. I love it. I don't know how to transition out of that, but that was really good. People do need to take things as not even just as metaphors, but they need to change the perspective that they have on like life scenarios, life situations, instead of taking it so like stringently, because then you're not going to see it that way. When you see it that way, it makes sense to, you got to act upon it. Like, even if you are scared at first, how long is it going to take you to actually go, you know what, maybe that was nothing, and start moving towards goals or opportunities that are in your path that, you need to do, or else you're just going to be stuck hiding in a cave all day. I mean, there's no better way to end that conversation, but I wanted to talk quickly about some other things. What's religion without talking about aliens when it comes to having a conversation with good old Sway, right?
Right.
And these are things that we've talked about before, personally, where it's like, if I were to go, because I can play devil's advocate, you can play devil's advocate even better than me. But if we were to go to like somebody who's super religious and they're kind of like blinded and don't want to, see any other form of thought, like they can't think for themselves almost, and it's like it's almost a sense of brainwashed. That's how I perceive it, right?
Okay.
I'm not picking out any religion specifically. I'm just saying somebody who has been under the influence
that type
of a religion.
Person in any.
That's what I'm saying. Somebody who's influenced.
In spirituality, you can still have those type of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the person that's influenced by some form of religion, and they've been stuck on that, and that's the only way, and they have no room for human thought, right? Any human thought we have it's wrong. It's a sin. Right, we shouldn't be doing it. We have to follow this rule or this book 100%. And when you think about it, you take a step back and you go, okay, by definition of an alien, by definition of an angel, tell me the difference.
Like right now?
Yeah, like right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like if you had to be that person, because, devil's advocate, if you had to be that person right now, put yourself in their seat, how would you explain an angel?
Well, I mean, an angel is something that would be like ordained by God. Right, it's a creature that was created by God, and at least in the Christian faith, angels don't have free will, which is what separates them from humans. And angels are created to do the workings and the duties of God, and go out there and do exactly that. So in a way, angels would kind of be like the mindless minions of the all-powerful being.
Okay. And they come from heaven, right?
Oh, they come from heaven, yeah.
So they're not in our
It depends
space.
if they got fired. If they got fired, then they come from
Okay,
heaven.
hold on.
Yeah.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So then, they're not in our realm right now. They're not in Earth, right? That we know of, right?
Correct.
Because they can come to Earth, but it's where do they reside? They're not residing on Earth.
I mean, heaven could be an interdimensional thing. It could be right outside our doorstep, in the terms of space. Yeah.
Okay. And you see that's a good example too, because somebody who's raised Christian is able to also use scientific terms, have an open mind to things and say things like that. Now, demons. Explain demons.
Well, I mean, those are the fired angels, right? So,
they're just homeless angels?
In a way, I guess. No, they have their home. They have their place. But in reality, I mean, demons are... And this is what's really interesting, right? Because angels don't have free will, okay? Lucifer said, I do.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of makes you think a little bit. Do they not have free will?
Or
like, is it not genetically ingrained in them? Or is it the choice to not have free will? Oh, interesting, right?
Oh, we give up certain
freedoms. Things. And Lucifer said, I can do a better job than you. In a nutshell, right? I mean, in a nutshell. Because I'm going to do a better job than you. I don't like what you're doing, and I want to create my own thing, and I'm jealous of you. And God said, okay.
Be gone.
Thought. Yeah, exactly. And sent him to hell.
Yeah.
And a third of the angels followed him and said, well, yeah, I think Lucifer could do a better job, or whatever the case may be, and followed Lucifer to hell. So now we're talking a little bit more about free choice in the angel environment that we typically don't think of when we think of angels, who are the direct servants of God. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, because that's almost what separates angels from human beings.
Right.
We are the ones that were given the free will.
Right. And angels apparently aren't, but Lucifer was able to make that decision, and so we're a third of the angels who, because obviously Lucifer didn't make the decision to be banished to hell, but because, Lucifer didn't make the decision to be banished to hell, but in a way a third of the angels did, which kind of makes you think, well,
a third of them had...
How bad is hell? And there was that free will and that choice to go to that place.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Now, question, do you think if the third of the angels that had free will, well, let's say they did have free will.
Enacted on it, yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference between them and human beings? What if the human beings are the quote-unquote demons?
And then we get into the talk about Nephilims.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
Which is a conversation we're avoiding today.
Yeah. Okay, but the whole point of that, instead of getting into that little story that you were telling, the connection between that and an alien, somebody who doesn't have necessarily like a religion or they believe in extraterrestrial life, right?
Right.
They're shut down so quick when explaining their belief in extraterrestrial life. Well, but then people of the faith, people of religions, they can do that. They can do exactly what you just did and told me stories or
a really crappy summary.
Yeah, a really crappy summary of what's outlined in the Bible of these otherworldly beings or other dimensional beings, right? That had this whole thing outside of Earth. And it's like, why are people arguing over it when it could be just the same thing? It's just the lack of communication or the fault in the translations.
So this is what's great about that, though, is, and to make a long story short, we have these sheiks that come into our shop to get their cars fixed and whatnot, because we have a lot of that community in our area where our shop's located. And I talked to them a couple times about religion. Again, talking about religion at work, right? But it can be a beautiful thing. And we're talking about some higher ups in this community, and having conversations with them. And sometimes, when we get to the end of it, we break it down. It's like, you say God, I say Allah. We're talking about the same person, And what's interesting to compare that with is in the spirituality side of it, where people talk about aliens, there is a section of them that go, you say angel, I say alien. We're kind of talking about the same thing, which opens up the door to a big opportunities, right? As far as that goes. And then, of course,
let's call it a more PC thing, an extraterrestrial, because it's not of Earth.
Right. So the extraterrestrials and the aliens and the angels, they call them like, okay, well, we could just be talking about the same thing. And there's a lot of study and research that goes on with that. And when you compare different like mythologies and different cultures and things like that, and kind of combine some of these more ancient stories that we have, and it's like, well, yeah, I could see these comparisons being very similar. And then, of course, there's a talk about the extraterrestrials just being different forms of life that are more advanced than us that come down. But there is that community that talks about it in that light, where it's like, you say Allah, I say God. Yeah, you say extraterrestrial, I say angel.
That's what we should be striving towards, because my uncle, he's a pastor. He's been a pastor since before I was born. And I can have conversations about that all day long with him. He's one of those people that are open-minded. He has his faith, he has his religion, but he doesn't think that having your own thoughts is a sin.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's the problem with like that herd mentality. That's kind of why I call it like brainwashing, because I'm not saying anything's bad with religion. It's just when you get consumed by this like hierarchy or whatever you want to call that, and it's like it takes over your ability to think for yourself.
Yeah.
And so, okay, when we're talking about religions and stuff, that's kind of all word of mouth. Similarly to if I were to explain to you about like when people talk about their drug-induced spiritual states. Right? Because we can...
Like ayahuasca.
Like ayahuasca. Yeah. Okay. Mother ayahuasca, when people talk about their trip, I mean, we've never tried it, but we have no, experience in that field. But when people tell me about it, and it's like, they've seen spiritual creatures or these interdimensional things, and it's like you can relate that with religion, you can relate that with aliens, and it's like that's a different field of spirituality where they don't have to be in a set religion, but they've experienced these things.
And they all come back in a much calmer state of mind.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the difference between me believing them and me believing somebody telling me about a religion? Which one holds more weight and credibility?
Right.
Because when it comes down to it, like I said, it's just kind of word of mouth. What's really the difference?
Yeah. But the bigger issue is going to be, you're going to believe what you're going to believe. What's going to make you the most comfortable anyways. Right? Because I can't sit here and force a different opinion on you the same way where, like you love and drive your FRS, and I can't come to you and be like, look, man, I get it. I appreciate the fact that you like Toyota, but Ford is the way. They're similar things. They take you to the same place, but you have to be in a Ford for the gate to open. So you must be in a Ford.
Right.
But
we're initially driving to the same place regardless.
I just want to drive my Toyota because it's got a better gearbox and it doesn't have... Let me not get into that. But, it's not going to leave me stuck on the side of the road like that Ford's going to. And then I'll have my own experiences that are going to be different from that. But all in all, I'm just trying to get you to do the same thing that I'm doing anyways.
Right.
And the big disclaimer to that, so I don't lose like my Christianity card here, and what I strongly believe, because of course the highest rewards you can get inside of your religion, of course, is to go out there and help convert people. Like that's kind of your duty. It's kind of your job, right? But if people aren't ready to be converted, then what are you doing? What's your point? It's good to plant the seeds in people's ear and let them come back to you. Because just like I said, I can't go out there and be so feverish about it like that. And in the same way that I'm telling people go out there and find what's comfortable for you. And like, of course, deep down inside, I'm just like, well, I hope you find Christ. But in that same way, where if you came back and you're just like, hey, I found this thing and I'm getting really involved in it and I'm going to be devoted to this, I'll be happy for you either way. Yeah. Because something that I was told by a pastor a long time ago was it is our job, our duty to convert. But for each individual that needs to be converted, it might not be your job to convert them. It might be your job to plant the seed and let somebody else finish it.
Yeah.
So just go out there, be the good person, do the best thing you can do for people, plant those seeds, and when they're ready to water it and harvest that crop, maybe that's somebody else's job. Maybe it's not yours.
Yeah, because the more you initially push on that, like push your message, the more that they're going to learn to resent that or just have like a stigma towards it. And they're going to never acknowledge that seed you initially gave them.
Right.
But, you know, something that I really do strongly believe, and, you know, I think every episode says it, you can go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And go ahead and share these videos to all of your friends and family, you know, especially the ones that are super religious or the ones that are super spiritual. Go ahead and send them over to our page. We would greatly appreciate it.
And to continue on your journey of research and self-growth here, you can always go over to our social medias where we always love to interact with everybody. Of course, we have the comment section down below here, but we do have a Facebook, we do have a Parler, and we do have an Instagram account. All those links are down below. Be sure to check them out. We post all kinds of great content on there. And yeah, like I said, we're always open to suggestions and comments.
All of our videos come out Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 a.m. EST. And until next time, guys, go and get.